Massive stone circles and temples appear on every continent. This video reveals the profound and puzzling global pattern of megalithic sites that connects ancient civilizations across impossible distances. You will gain a completely new perspective on human history, one where isolated cultures may have shared a hidden blueprint. How could the same architectural ideas appear in the British Isles, on remote Pacific shores, and high in the Andes Mountains, thousands of years apart? We are about to embark on a global detective story to find out. What does it say about us that our ancestors, everywhere, felt compelled to move mountains? The word itself is a clue, a direct translation from ancient Greek meaning simply large stone. Yet that definition barely scratches the surface of what these monuments represent. To call a structure megalithic is to say it is part of a profound human tradition, a deliberate choice by a community to invest immense effort into creating something permanent from the most stubborn material on Earth. This was never just about utility. You do not move a 50-ton block to build a practical wall for a practical house. This was about meaning. Archaeologists like Colin Renfrew point out that these projects required something revolutionary: social organization beyond the immediate family, a collective will and shared vision that could coordinate labor over seasons, even generations. The stones became the physical anchor for that vision. They served as resting places for ancestors, turning the landscape into a sacred genealogy. They functioned as astronomical observatories, aligning the cycles of the sun and moon with human ritual. They acted as territorial markers, proclaiming a group's presence and identity in the world. So when we look at a solitary standing stone on a windswept hill, we are not just seeing a rock. We are seeing the culmination of a society's belief, its memory, and its ambition to speak to the future. The real mystery then deepens. If this was merely a practical solution to a common problem, we would see similar styles everywhere. But we do not. Instead, we see distinct cultures separated by vast oceans and millennia, arriving at eerily similar architectural ideas, the same impulse to answer life's biggest questions with colossal stone. Recognizing this shared impulse is the key that unlocks the global pattern, a pattern written in granite and basalt across the entire face of the ancient world. This architectural vocabulary speaks a universal language of stone. One of its most fundamental dialects is Cyclopean Masonry, named for the mythical giants who were once thought to be the only beings capable of such work. The technique is deceptively simple in description, yet staggering in execution. Builders would select enormous, irregularly shaped blocks, often weighing many tons, and painstakingly shape them so that they fit together like a three-dimensional puzzle, locking in place under their own immense weight, with no mortar at all. We see this mastery in the mighty walls of Sacsayhuaman in Peru, where stones with complex, interlocking angles have withstood centuries of earthquakes. We find it again in the foundations of Mycenae in Greece and in the mysterious Nurag towers of Sardinia. This was not a primitive method, it was a brilliant one. It required an intimate understanding of geology, geometry, and physics, a knowledge that allowed structures to settle and shift without collapsing. The choice to use such a demanding technique when simpler methods were available tells us this was about creating an impression of timeless, unshakable power. Then there is the Trilithon, perhaps the most iconic megalithic form. Two massive vertical stones standing like silent sentinels, supporting a single, equally massive horizontal stone laid across their tops. The most famous example is, of course, Stonehenge on the Salisbury Plain. But travel across the Mediterranean to the ancient city of Baalbek in modern-day Lebanon, and you will encounter the Trilithon of the Jupiter Temple, 3 stones each estimated to weigh over 800 tons. The form is identical, This is not a basic post and lintel doorway, this is a monumental frame. It creates a portal, a threshold between worlds. Archaeologists note its use in marking sacred spaces and celestial alignments. The recurring choice of this specific, structurally challenging design, from the chalk downs of England to the Bekaa Valley, hints at a shared symbolic grammar, a way of using architecture to define a sacred geometry that resonated across cultures. Beyond walls and portals, other sophisticated forms repeat. The corbelled vault, where each successive layer of stone projects slightly inward until the space is roofed over, appears in the majestic tombs of Newgrange in Ireland and in the underground chambers of the Maya. The stone circle, a perfect or near-perfect ring of standing stones, defines sites from sub-Saharan Africa to the highlands of Armenia, and aligned passageways like the long, narrow corridors in many passage graves are often oriented to capture the light of the rising sun on a specific day, like the winter solstice. These are not random similarities, they are specific, complex engineering solutions and deliberate symbolic layouts. The question this pattern forces upon us is profound. Did cultures separated by continents and oceans independently arrive at these identical, sophisticated answers to both practical and spiritual challenges over and over again? Or does this recurring architectural lexicon suggest a different, deeper story, one where the blueprint itself was part of a much older and perhaps widely shared understanding of the world? The sheer geographical reach of this phenomenon defies simple explanation. If we were to plot these sites on a map, a startling network emerges, one that connects continents in a silent conversation of stone. In Western Europe, we find a dense constellation of monuments. The rolling hills of the British Isles are dotted with stone circles like Avebury and the iconic ring of Stonehenge, while across the Channel in Brittany, France, thousands of standing stones march in eerie rows at Karnak. Journey south into the Mediterranean, and the islands of Malta and Sardinia reveal their own contributions. Malta's Haga Kim and Mnajdra temples are among the oldest free-standing stone structures on Earth, while Sardinia's landscape is dominated by the conical Nurag towers, fortress-like structures built entirely from basalt blocks without mortar. Venture further east, and the scale of antiquity deepens. In southeastern Turkey, the site of Göbekli Tepe rewrites history. Dating back over 11,000 years, its massive, T-shaped pillars carved with intricate animal reliefs stand as a testament to a sophisticated hunter-gatherer society that erected monumental architecture before the invention of agriculture or permanent settlement. Northward, in the rugged Caucasus Mountains between the Black and Caspian Seas, lie thousands of dolmens, stone table-like structures whose origins and purpose remain deeply mysterious. Crossing into Asia, the pattern continues. The Korean peninsula and parts of Japan are home to vast fields of dolmens, some of the most numerous in the world, marking ancient resting places with massive capstones. Then leap across the greatest expanse of open ocean on the planet to Rapa Nui, Easter Island. There, the iconic moai, those brooding stone giants with their inscrutable gazes, stand as a monumental feat of engineering and transport on one of the most isolated islands in the world. Finally, high in the Andes Mountains of Peru, the fortress of Sacsayhuaman displays a breathtaking mastery of Cyclopean masonry, with stones so perfectly fitted that a blade cannot slide between them. This is our map, a series of brilliant, isolated points of light scattered across the globe. They are not connected by land, they are separated by vast oceans, impassable mountain ranges, and immense tracts of wilderness. The cultures that built them were, by all traditional accounts, completely unaware of each other's existence, and yet they were all compelled to express something profound through the same medium on a colossal scale. The distances involved do not just make the similarities interesting, they transform them into one of history's most compelling puzzles. How do we begin to solve a mystery written across the entire world? Perhaps the answer lies not just in where these sites are, but in when they were built and the startling sequence of their appearance through time. The timeline of these constructions does not follow a neat, linear path. It weaves a far more intricate puzzle. The oldest known major site, Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey, stands as a profound anomaly. Its massive, T-shaped pillars were erected an astonishing 11,000 years ago by a society of hunter-gatherers, people who had not yet settled into farming villages. This single site pushes the dawn of monumental architecture back thousands of years earlier than anyone previously believed. Now shift the clock forward. The Great Passage Tomb of Newgrange in Ireland, with its precise solar alignment, was built about 5,000 years ago. The iconic moai of Easter Island were raised roughly 1,000 years ago. And some of the great stone platforms, or Marae, across Polynesia are even younger, some constructed just a few centuries before European contact. This is not a wave of construction spreading steadily outward from a single point. Instead, it resembles a constellation of stars flickering to life at vastly different times across the dark expanse of history. A brilliant point ignites in Anatolia, then millennia later, another flares in Western Europe, followed much later by new lights in the Pacific and the Andes. This staggered, non-linear chronology presents a serious challenge to the simplest idea of cultural diffusion. The notion that the concept simply traveled in a straight line from one group to the next. If the knowledge of megalith building was carried by ancient travelers, why would it take thousands of years to reach nearby Europe, only to appear much later on islands on the opposite side of the globe? The timeline seems to leap, not creep, across the map. This forces a deeper question. Could a specific idea lie dormant for millennia, only to be rediscovered or reinvented by a culture facing a similar turning point? Many researchers suggest these monuments often emerge during periods of profound social change, when communities are growing, forming new identities, or grappling with new understandings of their place in the cosmos. The immense cooperative effort required to move a mountain serves to bind a society together, creating a shared project that literally and figuratively sets their values in stone. So, perhaps the blueprint was not a physical set of instructions carried by boat or on foot. Perhaps it was a latent human potential, a shared psychological and social response to a specific kind of threshold. When a culture reached a certain level of complexity and a need for permanent, sacred expression, the answer, in many different corners of the world, independently became the same: lift the impossible. This theory of independent invention is powerful, yet the striking specificity of the architectural forms, those trilithons and corbelled vaults, still whispers of a connection that defies our current maps of the ancient world. To unravel this, we must look closer, not just at when and where, but at the most tantalizing clue of all: what these stones were built to do. The stones themselves point skyward, offering their most compelling argument. Across continents, these monuments reveal a shared obsession with the movements of the sun, moon, and stars, transforming rock into a permanent, open-air observatory. Stonehenge's alignment to the summer solstice sunrise is its most famous feature, but that precision is echoed in places it should have no connection to at all. In the arid expanse of the Egyptian Sahara, the stone circle at Nabta Playa stands as a silent sentinel. Dating back over 7,000 years, it is actually older than its British counterpart. Researchers studying its layout found that its stones align not only with the summer solstice sunrise, but also with the rising points of key stars, suggesting a sophisticated, long-term tracking of the heavens by a nomadic pastoral people. This was not a temple in the traditional sense, but a calendar etched into the desert floor, a way to predict the coming of the vital seasonal rains. Leap across the Atlantic to the Americas, and the pattern holds. High in the Andes at Machu Picchu, the carved granite pillar known as the Intihuatana, often called the hitching post of the sun, functioned as a complex astronomical instrument. On the equinoxes, the sun would cast no shadow from its central gnomon, a moment of perfect balance between light and dark that held deep ceremonial significance for the Inca. Further north, in the arid canyons of the American Southwest, the ancestral Puebloan people of Chaco Canyon engineered a breathtaking celestial marker. At a site called Fajada Butte, 3 large stone slabs were positioned so that dagger-like shafts of sunlight would fall across precise spiral petroglyphs carved on a cliff face. These sun daggers would mark the solstices and equinoxes, and even track the more complex 19-year cycle of the moon. From the sands of Egypt to the mountains of Peru to the canyons of New Mexico, cultures with no conceivable contact all arrived at the same solution: to use colossal, immovable stone to capture the fleeting, predictable dance of the cosmos. This was not mere stargazing, it was a profound and practical science. Their survival often depended on knowing when to plant, when to harvest, and when to conduct the rituals that maintained their world. The megalith became the ultimate anchor, a fixed point in the landscape from which they could measure the infinite sky, turning celestial cycles into a reliable calendar written not on parchment, but in granite and shadow. But the alignment of these stones was not only with the living sky, it was also with the world beyond. A second, profound parallel connects these distant sites, one rooted in a universal human experience, the honoring of those who came before. From the misty valleys of Ireland to the remote shores of the Pacific, megalithic architecture served as a permanent bridge to the ancestors, transforming the landscape into a sacred memorial. The Great Passage Tomb of Newgrange is a masterclass in this concept. Its long, narrow corridor is engineered with such precision that for a few precious minutes at dawn on the winter solstice, a shaft of sunlight penetrates the inner chamber, flooding a space built as a resting place. This was not a coincidence, it was a deliberate, symbolic act, perhaps meant to represent the return of light, of life itself, to the realm of the departed. The stones were a mechanism to maintain a connection across what was seen as a thin veil. This pattern repeats in a simpler, yet equally widespread form, the dolmen. These stone table structures, found from the Korean peninsula to the forests of Scandinavia, served as collective memorial sites. A massive capstone, often weighing many tons, would be raised atop upright stones, creating a protected chamber. These were not markers for a single individual, but for a family or a lineage, anchoring a community's identity to a specific place through the physical presence of their forebears. Even the most iconic, isolated statues in the world are part of this tradition. On Easter Island, the imposing moai do not stand alone. They gaze inland from stone platforms called ahu. Archaeological work reveals that these ahu are not merely bases. They are themselves memorial sites containing the remains of individuals held in high esteem. The statue above was not just a portrait, it was a guardian for a sacred space of memory. This global funerary link speaks to a shared human imperative. Investing such staggering effort into stone for this purpose served multiple layers of meaning for these societies. On a practical level, it legitimized a community's claim to the land, rooting their right to be there in the deep time of their ancestors. Socially, it united the living through a shared lineage, giving everyone a common origin story set literally in stone. But on a spiritual level, it points to a concept that transcended isolated development, the idea of the monument as a permanent gateway. The massive stones did not just mark a location, they created a fixed point where the world of the living and the spiritual realm could meet, a threshold where communication, honor, and memory could flow in both directions. This was architecture as an act of faith in continuity, a declaration that the community included not only the present, but also the past and the future. When we see these tombs and platforms across the globe, we are seeing the same profound answer to one of humanity's oldest questions. How do we keep our loved ones close and ensure their legacy endures beyond a single lifetime? The stone was their answer, an answer so powerful it was discovered again and again. Carved into the very surfaces of these colossal stones, a second, more subtle language whispers to us. Across the silent faces of monoliths from Scotland to the Iberian Peninsula, a recurring set of abstract symbols appears, a visual code that seems to dance around the edges of meaning. We find spirals that coil inward like captured whirlpools, concentric circles that ripple outward like stones dropped in a pond, intricate zigzag patterns, and curious depressions known as cup and ring marks, where a central cup is surrounded by one or more engraved circles. These are not pictures of animals or people. They are something else entirely, a non-figurative vocabulary etched in stone. On the backs of some of Easter Island's moai, for instance, archaeologists have documented elaborate petroglyphs featuring these same motifs, including stylized birdmen and intricate circular designs. Meanwhile, in the Coa Valley of Portugal, thousands of open-air rock panels display similar spirals and patterns alongside depictions of ancient fauna, creating a vast outdoor gallery that spans millennia. The striking fact is not that these cultures depicted the same specific god or story, which they did not, but that they so often chose the same abstract visual toolkit to express something important. Researchers interpreting these symbols often connect them to fundamental, universal forces. The spiral might represent the cyclical journey of life, death, and rebirth, or the swirling motion of water and sky. Concentric circles could symbolize territorial boundaries, social cohesion, or perhaps celestial bodies. Zigzags may depict water, lightning, or the serpentine path of spiritual energy. While their original names and precise meanings are lost to us, their persistence is a powerful clue. They suggest that the builders of these monuments were participating in a shared symbolic grammar, a way of using mark-making to grapple with the core mysteries of existence, the flow of time, the source of fertility, and the structure of the cosmos itself. This transforms our understanding of the sites. The massive Trilithon or the towering statue was not an isolated statement. It was the central anchor of a much larger ritual landscape. The symbols carved upon it and on the surrounding bedrock were an integral part of its power, linking the architecture to the very elements it sought to honor or influence. The stone circle was not just an observatory, it was a page in a sacred text, and the spirals upon its stones were the punctuation in a sentence written for the earth and the sky. This layer of shared symbolism deepens the mystery exponentially, pointing to a connection that may be less about transferred blueprints and more about a parallel development of the human mind, a collective unlocking of similar ways to make the invisible world visible. The silent stones hold a secret of immense physical effort. Behind every perfectly placed trilithon and every towering statue lies a practical puzzle that unites these distant cultures, the sheer, staggering challenge of moving the immovable. How did ancient people without modern machinery transport blocks weighing tens, sometimes hundreds of tons across miles of rugged landscape, and then raise them into precise positions? The methods they developed, often deduced from tool marks, soil impressions, and modern experiments, reveal a fascinating convergence of human ingenuity. One of the most widely theorized techniques involves the humble log roller. By placing a massive stone on a sledge or cradle atop a series of rolling logs, a large team could, with coordinated pulling, overcome friction and inch the colossal weight forward. As the sledge moved, logs from the back would be carried to the front, creating a continuous, movable road. To make this even more feasible, many researchers suggest the use of lubricants, water or animal fat poured onto wooden tracks to create a slippery surface. This idea is not just speculation, it has been tested. At the Bougon Museum in France, teams of volunteers using only reconstructed Neolithic tools and techniques have successfully moved and erected multi-ton stones, demonstrating that what seems miraculous was achievable through organized labor and clever physics. The process would have been agonizingly slow, a project of years, but it was possible. This points to a profound social truth. The construction of the monument was as important as the finished product, a ritual of unity that bound the community together through shared toil. For the iconic moai of Easter Island, a particularly captivating theory emerged, the idea that the statues themselves could walk. Researchers Terry Hunt and Carl Lipo proposed that by rocking a moai from side to side with ropes, teams could create a shuffling, forward motion, effectively making the statue walk itself across the island. While this theory is debated, it powerfully illustrates a key principle: separated cultures, when faced with the identical problem of moving a giant stone form, can and did arrive at strikingly analogous solutions. They looked at the resources available, wood, rope, human strength, and devised a method of mechanical advantage. This is the heart of the engineering enigma. The shared challenge of overcoming friction and weight led to a convergent evolution of technology. From the sledges of Egypt to the possible walking moai of the Pacific, the solutions are variations on a theme, a testament to a universal human trait. When presented with a monumental goal, we find a way to move mountains together. The true power of a standing stone may have been forged long before it ever touched the earth. To understand the global pattern, we must look beyond the silent monuments and into the vibrant, noisy, human world that created them. Anthropologists point to a compelling idea: the construction process itself was the catalyst. Organizing a society to move a mountain was a social revolution. It demanded more than just strong backs. It required a new kind of thinking. Someone had to plan the project, to identify the perfect stone in a distant quarry. Others had to specialize in shaping it with stone mauls and fire. Teams had to be coordinated to transport it, a grueling endeavor of ropes, log rollers, and synchronized chants that could take months. This was the birth of complex social structure, the division of labor and the emergence of leaders not just by strength, but by vision. From the tribal networks of Neolithic Britain to the clan systems of the Polynesian islands, the act of building together served a profound, universal function. It transformed a collection of families or rival groups into a single, unified community. The shared hardship, the blistered hands and tired shoulders, became a binding ritual. Each person, from the planner to the puller, invested a piece of themselves into this permanent, shared achievement. When they finally stood back and saw that capstone settle into place, they were not just looking at a pile of rocks. They were looking at the physical proof of their own cooperation, a testament to what they could accomplish together that would stand for generations. The monument became the anchor for their collective identity, literally rooting their new sense of us into the very landscape. So the global pattern might not be a map of traveling architects, but a map of human societies reaching the same social turning point. When the need for unity and meaning grew strong enough, the answer everywhere was to find a common purpose heavy enough to bring everyone together. This brings us to the heart of the great historical divide, a debate that has sparked arguments for over a century. On one side stands the diffusionist idea. Its proponents suggest that a single, forgotten maritime culture, perhaps a sophisticated seafaring people, once sailed the oceans and shared the blueprint for building in stone. Adventurers like Thor Heyerdahl famously demonstrated that ancient voyages were possible, sailing his reed boat Kon-Tiki from South America to Polynesia to prove a point. The argument is compellingly simple. How else do you explain such specific similarities like the Trilithon appearing in Lebanon and England? The diffusionists see a map of lost voyages, a network of cultural exchange that mainstream history has simply missed. On the opposing side stands the dominant theory in modern archaeology, that of independent invention, often called convergent evolution. Scholars here argue that humanity, when presented with the same fundamental problems and the same universal material, will often craft strikingly similar solutions. Every culture needs to mark its territory, to honor its lineage, and to understand the turning of the seasons. Stone is permanent, stone is imposing, and stone is available almost everywhere. The process of trial and error, of learning how to move and shape these blocks, could logically lead different societies down parallel paths of engineering discovery. The social need for a unifying project, as we just explored, could act as the same powerful catalyst across the globe. So, who is right? The evidence presents a frustrating and fascinating puzzle. The vast distances and the wildly staggered timelines make a simple, direct transfer of knowledge seem highly unlikely. Yet, the recurring specificity of the forms and the symbolic motifs whisper of something more than mere coincidence. Perhaps the most satisfying answer lies not at the extremes but in a nuanced middle ground. Could there have been limited, sporadic contact between ancient peoples? A chance meeting on a distant shore, a lone vessel blown off course, an exchange of ideas between trading partners along a coastline. Such an encounter could plant a seed, a powerful concept, like the notion of raising a colossal stone to bridge earth and sky. That seed would not grow into an identical copy, but would be nourished by the unique soil of the local culture, its beliefs, its environment, and its needs. The result would be a family of monuments connected by a shared inspirational spark, yet each expressing it in a brilliantly distinct dialect. This would create the very pattern we see, one that feels both profoundly connected and wonderfully diverse. Göbekli Tepe stands as a silent revolution in stone. Nestled on a wind-swept hilltop in southeastern Turkey, this site does not simply add a chapter to our history, it rewrites the entire opening of the book. Dated to around 9600 BCE, its construction predates Stonehenge by a staggering 6,000 years, and it predates the invention of pottery and the wheel. But the most profound shock lies in the identity of its builders. The people who erected Göbekli Tepe were not settled farmers living in villages. They were hunter-gatherers, communities that followed the herds and gathered wild plants. According to everything we thought we knew, such societies simply did not have the surplus, the stability, or the organizational need to build something so monumental. Yet here it is, a complex of at least 20 circular enclosures, each defined by a ring of massive T-shaped limestone pillars, with two even larger pillars set in the center. Some of these monoliths stand over 16 feet tall and weigh more than 10 tons. They are not rough, unshaped boulders. They are meticulously quarried, transported, and finished. Their flat, broad surfaces carved with an astonishing bestiary of lions, foxes, boars, scorpions, and birds. This was not a practical dwelling or a storage facility. It was unquestionably a central ritual space, a sacred gathering point on a colossal scale. Its existence shatters a long-held assumption that the security and surplus of farming were necessary prerequisites for grand architecture. Göbekli Tepe turns that logic on its head. Here, the architectural ambition came first. The driving force was not economic surplus, but a powerful, shared spiritual or social vision so compelling that it could mobilize hundreds of people across a wide region, coordinating their labor over generations, long before the first seed was deliberately planted. This suggests the megalithic impulse, that deep-seated drive to alter the landscape for a purpose beyond mere survival, is a fundamental part of the human story, emerging at the very dawn of our collective consciousness. The site's lead excavator, Klaus Schmidt, proposed a radical idea. What if building Göbekli Tepe did not follow agriculture but actually helped cause it? The theory is captivating. To feed the large groups of people gathering for construction and ceremony at this remote hilltop, a reliable food source was needed. This necessity may have spurred the intensive cultivation of wild grasses like early wheat, which grew in the surrounding foothills. The ritual center, in this view, created the social and logistical demand that pushed humanity toward domestication. The stone circle, therefore, was not a symbol of an established agricultural society, but the very catalyst that brought it into being. Göbekli Tepe presents us with a possible primordial template, a blueprint written in the Neolithic dawn. It shows that the desire to create a permanent, awe-inspiring space for communal ritual is an ancient and powerful engine of human innovation, one that may have set our species on the path to civilization itself. If this is the original template, then every stone circle, every towering statue, and every Cyclopean wall that came after across the entire globe is part of a story that began here on a lonely hill in Anatolia over 11,000 years ago. While Göbekli Tepe rewrites the dawn of history, a different kind of monument reveals the staggering ambition this tradition could achieve. On the windswept coast of Brittany in northwestern France, the land itself seems to have been marshaled into order. Here, the Karnak alignments create a scene of profound and eerie geometry, a sprawling testament to communal will written across 4,000 years. Over 3,000 individual standing stones, known as menhirs, are arranged in astonishingly straight, parallel rows that march across the countryside for kilometers. Some rows contain hundreds of stones, with the largest individual menhirs standing over 4 meters tall. Unlike the intimate, enclosed circles of other sites, Karnak feels vast and directional, less like a temple and more like a colossal outdoor cathedral without walls, its aisles defined by granite. The sheer scale of labor represented here is almost beyond comprehension. Archaeologists estimate that constructing these alignments required the coordinated effort of generations, spanning centuries if not a full millennium. Each stone, sourced from local granite outcrops, had to be quarried, shaped, transported sometimes over several miles, and then erected with its base firmly set into a prepared pit. This was not a single project with a defined end, but a cultural tradition, a recurring ritual of place-making that grew over time, each new row or added stone reinforcing a sacred geography. The purpose of this immense undertaking remains one of Europe's great archaeological puzzles. One compelling theory suggests the rows functioned as a sophisticated astronomical calendar. Certain alignments appear to point toward significant solar and lunar rising points on the horizon, potentially marking dates critical to an agricultural cycle. Another hypothesis views the stones as a permanent sacred boundary, separating the mundane world from a ritually charged space, perhaps associated with honoring ancestors whose memorial sites dot the nearby landscape. A more evocative idea imagines the rows as a petrified army, a spiritual garrison standing eternal watch over the territory, transforming the landscape itself into a symbol of collective power and protection. What Karnak demonstrates so powerfully is an evolution of the megalithic idea into a form that organizes not just a single site, but an entire territory. This was a sophisticated manipulation of the natural environment for profound cultural purposes. The builders did not simply place stones in a clearing, they imposed a breathtaking human geometry upon the rolling heathland, creating a processional landscape designed to guide movement, focus vision, and inspire awe. Walking between those silent, endless rows today, one feels the weight of that intention, a community's deep desire to inscribe their beliefs directly onto the earth itself, to create a stage for rituals so important they needed a backdrop of literal mountains moved. If Göbekli Tepe was a primordial spark, Karnak represents that spark fanned into a continent-spanning flame, showing how the language of stone could be used to write epic poems across the landscape. Isolation makes the moai of Rapa Nui, Easter Island, all the more astonishing. This tiny volcanic speck in the vast South Pacific is the most remote inhabited island on our planet, over 2,000 kilometers from the nearest neighbor. Here, a Polynesian culture developed in complete solitude for centuries, cut off from any outside influence or trade. And yet, when they sought to express their deepest beliefs about lineage and power, they arrived at a monumental answer that echoes the global pattern. They carved giants from the living rock. The moai are not merely statues, they are a complete, self-contained megalithic tradition born from an island's own imagination. Each figure began its life inside the volcanic crater of Ronoroku, a sacred landscape that served as a vast outdoor workshop. Using hand-held basalt picks, master carvers would painstakingly shape the soft volcanic tuff, freeing the imposing forms from the quarry walls. Hundreds of these figures, in various stages of completion, still stand or lie within the crater, creating a haunting snapshot of a process frozen in time. Once a moai was finished, the real challenge began. How did a community, likely numbering only in the thousands, move a multi-ton stone colossus up to 18 kilometers across the island's rugged terrain to its final coastal resting place? The island's own oral traditions speak of the statues walking, guided by the spiritual power, or mana, of chiefs and priests. Modern experiments have shown that a rocking, side-to-side motion using ropes could indeed make a moai appear to shuffle forward, a plausible method that turns legend into potential engineering. This transport was a staggering logistical feat, a communal pilgrimage that transformed the landscape into a ceremonial pathway. The journey culminated at the Ahu, a massive, precisely built stone platform that served as the statue's permanent base. These Ahu were far more than simple pedestals. They were the sacred heart of a clan's territory. Archaeologists have found that many Ahu platforms contain memorial chambers, the resting places of honored individuals. The completed moai, with their solemn, elongated faces and strong brows, were then placed upon this platform, their backs deliberately turned to the endless sea. This orientation is the final, powerful clue to their meaning. They did not gaze outward toward some distant horizon. They looked inland, their stone eyes watching over the villages, gardens, and resources of the living clan that built them. They were permanent ancestor figures, embodiments of lineage and authority, using their silent presence to protect and legitimize the community's claim to the land. The story of Rapa Nui is often framed as a cautionary tale of ecological collapse, and while environmental challenges were real, focusing solely on that misses the profound cultural achievement. With nothing but stone tools, human ingenuity, and an immense collective will, this isolated society conceived and executed one of the world's most iconic monumental traditions. They developed their own unique answer to the universal human questions of memory, belonging, and the sacred, an answer written in the language of colossal stone. Their achievement stands as a brilliant, independent confirmation of the megalithic impulse, proving that even in the most remote corner of the world, the drive to build the permanent can flourish. The Caucasus Mountains hold a secret written in thousands of silent stone houses. While less famous than the circles of Europe or the statues of the Pacific, the dolmens scattered across this rugged land bridge between the Black and Caspian Seas form one of the most concentrated and mysterious megalithic landscapes on Earth. Built roughly 5,000 years ago, these structures present a unique and haunting signature. Each one is a small, box-like chamber, typically constructed from 4 or 5 massive stone slabs, with a fifth, even larger slab placed on top as a roof. The craftsmanship is astonishingly precise, the heavy slabs cut and fitted together so carefully that many have remained intact for millennia. But the most distinctive and puzzling feature is the single, round hole, like a stone porthole, deliberately carved into the front slab. This small, circular entrance, often just large enough for a single person to crawl through, transforms the dolmen from a simple box into something profoundly intentional. What was the purpose of this precise aperture? Was it a symbolic doorway for offerings, a portal for spiritual passage, or a practical feature for some long-forgotten ritual? The uniformity of this design across thousands of these structures, from the coastal foothills to the high mountain valleys, speaks of a cultural practice that was not a local oddity, but a widespread, deeply ingrained tradition. This region was no backwater. It was an ancient crossroads, a natural highway where the worlds of the Eurasian steppe, the Near East, and the Mediterranean could meet and mingle. The sheer abundance of these dolmens, sometimes appearing in dense clusters, suggests this was a nexus, a hub of cultural activity where ideas about death, memory, and stone could converge and perhaps radiate outward. Their sophisticated, consistent style hints at a highly organized society with shared beliefs and specialized builders, capable of executing the same complex vision across a vast and difficult terrain. They remind us that the story of megaliths is not a tale with one or two famous stars, but a constellation with many bright points, some of which, like these Caucasian sentinels, played a crucial yet quietly underappreciated role in humanity's monumental conversation. Stone is a promise against time. When a society invests generations of labor into moving mountains, the choice of material is never accidental. Across every continent, from the granite of Karnak to the volcanic tuff of Rapa Nui, the builders consistently rejected easier options. They passed over abundant timber, pliable earth, and readily available thatch, and instead chose the most stubborn, most demanding substance their environment offered. This was a deliberate, costly decision. So why stone? The answer echoes in the silence of a standing stone that has watched 1,000 years of sunrises. Stone endures, it resists fire, rot, and the relentless pull of decay in a way that organic materials simply cannot. A wooden temple can burn, an earthen mound can wash away. But a trilithon, a dolmen, a Cyclopean wall, these stand as a declaration of permanence. By building in stone, these cultures were not just constructing a ritual space for themselves. They were drafting a message intended for eternity, a deliberate attempt to communicate with generations so far in the future they were unimaginable, and with the timeless cycles of the cosmos itself. The monument was built to become a landmark for the future, a fixed point that would say, "We were here, this mattered, remember us." This drive transcends practical need and touches something deep in the human spirit, a universal desire to create a legacy that outlasts the fleeting individual lifespan. The staggering effort becomes an investment in immortality, not for a person but for an idea, a lineage, a way of understanding the world. But the choice of stone often carried a deeper spiritual resonance. In many of these cultures, stone was not seen as inert matter. It was alive with meaning. It was considered the bones of the Earth Mother, the very skeleton of the living world. To build with stone was to incorporate a piece of that primordial power into your sacred architecture. Some traditions viewed certain stones as conduits for earthly energies, as focal points where the vitality of the land could be channeled or accessed. The careful selection of specific stones from particular quarries, a practice seen from the bluestones of Stonehenge to the distinct tuff of Rano-Raraku, suggests the material itself was sacred, charged with a significance we can now only glimpse. So this global pattern is not just a map of similar shapes, it is a map of a shared philosophical choice. It reflects a collective human realization that to make a statement profound enough to bridge generations, you must use the vocabulary of the eternal. You must build with time itself. The stone circle, the towering statue, the hidden chamber, each was an attempt to anchor a community's most cherished beliefs in something as close to forever as they could conceive. In the face of our own mortality and the constant change of the world, these stones were their answer, a way to whisper to the future through the most permanent medium they could find. The silent stones are beginning to speak in frequencies we are only now learning to hear. While we can see their alignments and touch their weathered surfaces, modern science is opening entirely new sensory windows into these ancient spaces, revealing dimensions of their design that were invisible for millennia. This new frontier is led by two fascinating fields, astroarchaeology and archaeoacoustics. The first, astroarchaeology, has moved us far beyond simple speculation. By using sophisticated software to digitally rewind the night sky, astronomers can reconstruct exactly what the heavens looked like from any point on Earth thousands of years ago. This has allowed researchers to test long-held theories about celestial alignments with mathematical precision. At many sites, the results are stunningly clear. The passage at Newgrange is not roughly oriented toward the winter sun. It is engineered to capture that single, narrow beam of light with the accuracy of a laser sight. The strange, window-like slots in Maya temples at places like Chichen Itza are now confirmed to create precise light and shadow effects marking the equinoxes. This scientific validation transforms our understanding. It shows us that the builders possessed not just observational skill, but a deep, codified knowledge of celestial cycles, which they translated into immutable stone. Perhaps even more evocative is the emerging field of archaeoacoustics, the study of sound within ancient spaces. Researchers have begun to listen to these monuments, not with stories, but with microphones and frequency analyzers. What they are discovering is astonishing. Many megalithic sites are not acoustically neutral. They are carefully tuned environments. Take the hypogeum of Hal Saflieni in Malta, an extraordinary underground labyrinth carved from solid limestone over 5,000 years ago. This is not a natural cave. It is a meticulously engineered, multi-level structure of chambers and passages. When scientists tested its acoustic properties, they found something extraordinary. Sound behaves in strange ways there. A deep male voice chanting in certain chambers, like the famous oracle room, creates a powerful, resonant vibration that seems to fill the entire space, felt in the bones as much as heard. This is not an accident of geology. It appears to be a feature of the design. The curved walls and specific dimensions of the chambers amplify particular low frequencies that can have a profound effect on human consciousness, potentially inducing states of tranquility or heightened awareness. This phenomenon is not isolated to Malta. At Newgrange, the long, stone-lined passageway and corbelled chamber create a unique acoustic signature where sound echoes in a specific, lingering way. In the great stone circles of Britain, some archaeologists have noted that the placement of stones can create interference patterns, dead spots where sound disappears, and hot spots where it is amplified, turning the circle into a kind of primitive soundboard. What does this tell us? It suggests powerfully that these sites were designed as full sensory experiences. Rituals here were likely not silent, meditative affairs. They may have been vibrant, sonic events, the deep thrum of a drum, the rhythmic chant of voices, the blast of a horn made from a conch shell. These sounds would have interacted with the architecture, becoming something greater than the sum of their parts. The very stones would have seemed to sing back, to participate in the ceremony. This transforms a monument from a static sculpture into a dynamic instrument, a technology for shaping human experience. The shared design principle across cultures, then, might extend beyond shape and alignment to include an intuitive or discovered understanding of sound and its power to connect communities, to honor ancestors, and to bridge the perceived gap between the earthly and the spiritual. The global pattern gains a new layer, one not just of sight but of profound, resonant sound. The vast Pacific Ocean was not a barrier but a highway. While the isolated peaks of Easter Island offer one story, the broader Polynesian world provides another, a brilliant case study in how a monumental tradition can sail. Across thousands of miles of open sea, from Hawaii to New Zealand to Tahiti, navigators used the stars, the swells, and the flight paths of birds to find and settle islands scattered like pebbles on a blue canvas. They did not travel light. They carried with them an entire cultural worldview, a toolkit of beliefs, social structures, and architectural ideas. Central to this portable identity was the concept of the sacred platform, known across the islands as the Marae or Heiau in Hawaii. These were not the towering statues of Rapa Nui, but powerful, elegant expressions of the same fundamental principle: the use of stone to create a permanent, ritually charged space that connected the community to the gods and the ancestors. A typical marae was an open-air courtyard, often rectangular, defined by a low stone wall or a platform of carefully fitted basalt or coral blocks. At one end stood an ahu, a raised altar or backrest of stone, sometimes holding upright slabs. This was the focal point, the interface between the human and the divine. The entire space was a stage for ceremony, for honoring lineage, for making communal decisions, and for seeking guidance. What makes the Polynesian example so compelling for our global mystery is its clear, traceable lineage. As voyagers discovered new islands, they adapted this core architectural idea to the materials at hand. In the lush, volcanic islands of Hawaii, the Heiau grew into massive, multi-terraced complexes of stone, some covering acres. In the coral atolls of the Tuamotus, builders used the only stone available, slabs of coral painstakingly raised from the lagoon. And on Easter Island, as we have seen, the ahu platform evolved to support the iconic moai, becoming the grandest expression of this shared tradition. Here, within the Polynesian family, we see undeniable diffusion, the direct transfer and local evolution of a megalithic concept across an ocean network. This offers a powerful, tangible model for how ideas can travel with people. It shows that a society can carry the blueprint for sacred stonework in its collective memory, planting it on new shores where it takes root and grows into a form uniquely suited to its new home. The Polynesian experience demonstrates that long-distance diffusion is not only possible, but was achieved with breathtaking success. It presents us with a potential microcosm, a smaller, clearer window into a process that, on a global scale and across deeper time, remains shrouded in mist. If a canoe could carry the idea of the Marae across the Pacific, what other vessels in other eras might have carried similar seeds across other seas? Yet the stones inspired more than just architecture, they gave birth to legends. When later generations gazed upon these impossible structures, their own explanations emerged not from archaeology but from mythology. And here another uncanny pattern appears. Across the world, the stories told about these sites share a common, humbling theme. The builders were not ordinary people like us. In the Celtic traditions surrounding Stonehenge, the great stones were said to have been transported by the wizard Merlin or erected by a race of ancient giants. On the remote shores of Rapa Nui, oral history insists the massive moai did not need human hands to travel. They walked to their coastal platforms animated by the spiritual power or mana of powerful chiefs. High in the Andes, an Incan legend describes how the colossal blocks of Sacsayhuamon were not dragged, but were softened with the juice of a magical plant, allowing them to be molded into place like clay before hardening back into stone. From the Pacific to the British Isles to the mountains of South America, the attribution is remarkably consistent. Gods, giants, magicians, or a lost, superior race must have done this work. Why would cultures so distant from one another all default to the same kind of supernatural explanation? Scholars of folklore suggest these myths may be a form of cultural memory, a deep psychological echo. Imagine a farmer in medieval Britain living in a timber and thatch hut, looking up at the Sarsen Trilithons of Stonehenge. The technological gap between his world and the world that built those stones was so vast it was unbridgeable by ordinary logic. The only rational conclusion to him was that the builders possessed power beyond the human. The monument itself, by its sheer, enduring scale, generated a narrative of otherworldly origin. These stories are not failed history. They are a testament to the monument's lasting psychological impact. They represent the awe of the descendant, a recognition that the achievement was so profound it transcended the ordinary human story. This shared mythological trope underscores a universal human reaction to the truly monumental. When faced with evidence of a past that seems greater than our present understanding, we instinctively reach for myth. We populate that gap in knowledge with giants and gods, because to admit that our own ancestors, with nothing but stone, rope, and coordinated will, could move mountains challenges our own sense of time and capability. The legends, therefore, become a mirror. They reflect not who built the stones, but how those who came after struggled to comprehend a legacy written in a language of effort they had forgotten. A new layer to this mystery emerges from the very earth and sky that surrounded these ancient builders. What if the impulse to build in stone was not born from calm prosperity, but from a profound and shared crisis? Some researchers propose a compelling environmental trigger hypothesis. They suggest that periods of dramatic climate change, such as the Great Transition at the end of the last ice age or more localized ecological shifts, acted as a powerful catalyst for this global phenomenon. Imagine a world in flux where familiar weather patterns falter, where once reliable food sources become scarce, and where the stability of the entire community feels threatened. In such a landscape of uncertainty, social stress would have intensified. Competition for dwindling resources could spark conflict between neighboring groups. The old ways of living, the old social contracts, might no longer suffice. In this view, the decision to erect a megalith was far more than a spiritual act. It was a profound social strategy for survival. Faced with a crisis that no single family could overcome, the community needed a new kind of glue. The act of building together became that adhesive. By uniting to move a mountain, they reinforced a powerful, shared identity. They created a visible, undeniable claim to their territory, a statement written in granite that said, "This land is ours and we are united in its defense." Furthermore, the monument could serve as a desperate plea or a gesture of gratitude to the spiritual forces perceived to control the sun, the rain, and the fertility of the soil. If the weather was turning against them, what better offering could they make than the greatest labor of their lives, a permanent altar to seek favor or restore balance? This stress hypothesis offers an elegant explanation for the staggered, convergent pattern we see worldwide. It suggests that when disparate cultures, from the foggy coasts of Europe to the high deserts of Peru, faced similar environmental pressures, rising sea levels, prolonged droughts, shifting growing seasons, they independently arrived at a similar social solution. That solution was to invest their collective anxiety and hope into a transformative project, one that would leave a permanent mark on the world. The choice of stone was key, for in a time of terrifying change, they sought to create something that would not wash away with the next storm, something that would stand as a testament to their resilience for generations to come. The megalith, therefore, becomes a symbol not just of faith, but of incredible human adaptability, a durable anchor cast into the turbulent seas of a changing world. But to see only the pattern is to miss half the story. The differences between these sites are not just footnotes, they are the vibrant, defining signatures of the cultures that built them. Look closely at the art they left behind. The fierce, naturalistic reliefs of lions and vultures at Göbekli Tepe speak of a hunter-gatherer world intimately tied to the animal kingdom, a cosmology of power and survival. Cross to Neolithic Europe, and you find an entirely different visual language, one of abstract spirals, concentric circles, and meandering lines etched into stone, a symbolic code perhaps representing water, growth, or celestial motion. Then sail to Easter Island, and the art becomes the human form itself, rendered in a highly stylized, monumental way, all elongated ears, strong brows, and solemn presence, reflecting a society deeply focused on ancestral lineage and chiefly authority. The iconography does not match because the stories, the gods, and the daily realities of these people did not match. their artistic expression was as unique as their language. The engineering, while solving the universal problem of moving heavy stone, also reveals brilliant local adaptation. On Easter Island, the soft volcanic tuff of the Ronoroku crater allowed carvers to work the stone in place, shaping the moai directly from the living rock face before detaching them. In the Caucasus, builders worked with dense, slab-like stones, quarrying and fitting them into the precise, box-like dolmens that define the region. The methods were tailored to the available material and the desired final form, a testament to on-the-ground ingenuity rather than a received instruction manual. Even the social fabric behind these projects varied dramatically. Göbekli Tepe was likely built by a coalition of mobile hunter-gatherer bands coming together for seasonal rituals. The Great Stone Rows of Karnak or the Heiau of Polynesia, however, were almost certainly projects of more settled, hierarchical societies, perhaps chiefdoms with the organized labor and long-term leadership to coordinate decades of work. This diversity of context is crucial. It tells us that the megalithic template was not a rigid, cookie-cutter blueprint imposed from afar. It was a profoundly flexible and powerful idea, a seed that could only grow in the specific soil of a culture. Each society took the core concept of permanent, monumental stonework and infused it with its own beliefs, its own artistic vision, and its own solutions to local challenges. The pattern is real, but it is a pattern of adaptation, not of duplication. The true wonder lies in this beautiful tension, the shared human impulse to build for eternity, expressed in 1,000 distinct, magnificent dialects. They stand as silent counterpoints to our modern world of fleeting digital streams and planned obsolescence. In an era where so much of our experience is virtual, temporary, and instantly replaced, the physical, stubborn permanence of a megalithic site commands a different kind of attention. We are drawn to these places not merely as tourists, but as pilgrims to a mystery. We run our hands over stone worn smooth by millennia of weather, feeling the chill of a material that was ancient before the first pyramid was conceived. That tactile connection bridges an impossible gap. It makes the abstract idea of deep time suddenly, shockingly real. We are touching the same surface that a Neolithic builder touched, sharing a moment across 5,000 years. This creates a powerful, almost paradoxical feeling. The site feels alien in its purpose and scale, yet intimately familiar in its proof of human hands, human effort, and human yearning. It whispers that our ancestors were not so different from us. They too sought meaning. They too looked at the stars and wondered, and they too desired to leave a mark that said, "We were here." This challenges a comfortable, linear story we often tell ourselves about human history, the myth of constant, upward progress. We tend to label these societies as primitive, a word that carries connotations of simplicity or lack of sophistication. But the evidence written in stone dismantles that assumption completely. A so-called primitive people did not build Göbekli Tepe or raise the moai. These were communities of profound knowledge, possessing a sophisticated understanding of astronomy, geology, geometry, and social organization that we are only now beginning to fully appreciate. They could not send a text message, but they could move a mountain and align it with the solstice sun with pinpoint accuracy. Their achievement forces a humbling question: what have we gained in our modern age, and what might we have lost? Their technology was not of silicon and steel, but of community and coordinated will. In a world without cranes, their crane was the collective spirit of an entire people, pulling together toward a single, monumental goal. That kind of social cohesion, that shared vision, feels in many ways like a forgotten superpower. Ultimately, our enduring fascination with these stones is less about solving an archaeological puzzle and more about understanding ourselves. They act as timeless mirrors. In their silent, imposing presence, we see reflected our own deepest curiosities, our hunger to know where we come from and what we are capable of. They represent a primal human itch, the drive to create something lasting, to communicate across the ages, to touch the eternal. Every photograph taken, every quiet moment of awe spent in a stone circle, every theory debated by researchers is part of that same continuum. We are still trying to read the message they left, not just in the alignments and carvings, but in the very fact of their existence. They remind us that before empires, before written language, before all the complexities of modern civilization, people came together and performed the impossible simply because they believed it mattered. That belief, etched in granite across the globe, may be the most powerful legacy of all, a whisper from the past urging us to consider what mountains we might move together today. Perhaps the truth of the stones lies not in choosing one theory over another, but in weaving them together. The global pattern is so vast, so varied, and so persistent that a single explanation feels insufficient. Instead, we might view it through a more nuanced lens, a synthesis that honors both the possibility of connection and the power of independent genius. Think of it as a seed and soil model. Imagine a basic idea, a seed, something as fundamental as the concept of using colossal, permanent stone to honor ancestors, track the heavens, or mark sacred ground. How might such a seed travel? We often picture ancient oceans as barriers, but for much of human prehistory, they were lower. Vast coastal plains that are now submerged, like the legendary Doggerland between Britain and Europe, or the Sunda Shelf in Southeast Asia, were dry land, highways for early human migration and interaction. Along these now drowned shorelines, ideas could have drifted with the currents of people. A chance encounter, a story told around a fire by a traveler from a distant shore, a glimpse of a strange practice. These fleeting moments could plant a conceptual seed. This is not the grand diffusion of a lost civilization, but the slow, sporadic, almost accidental transmission of a powerful meme. The seed itself is simple and portable, the profound notion that stone equals eternity. Then that seed lands in the unique soil of a specific culture. Here, on an island in the Pacific, in the high Andes, or on the chalk downs of England, it finds its own conditions. The local environment provides the stone, the geography presents the challenges, the social structure, whether a gathering of clans or a developing chiefdom, provides the labor and the need. The local genius, the creative spark of that particular people, provides the form. The seed does not grow into an identical copy, it adapts. In the soil of Rapa Nui, it grows into the solemn, ancestral Moai. In the soil of Britain, it grows into the cosmic circle of Stonehenge. In the soil of the Caucasus, it grows into the enigmatic porthole dolmen. This model beautifully resolves the great debate. It allows for limited, early contact and the sharing of inspirational concepts without demanding impossible voyages or identical outcomes. It acknowledges that the human mind, when faced with similar profound questions about life, death, and the cosmos, in similar social and environmental circumstances, can and will arrive at parallel, magnificent solutions. The shared pattern is not a blueprint but a family resemblance. The stones of Karnak and the Moai of Easter Island are not twins. They are distant cousins, related by a common ancestral idea that each culture dressed in its own magnificent local fashion. This synthesis does not diminish the achievement of any society, it elevates it. It says that humanity's story is one of both shared sparks and brilliant, isolated fires, a tapestry woven from threads of contact and threads of stunning, independent invention. The silent stones scattered across our world present a profound choice about our own past. This global pattern of megaliths does not fit neatly onto the map we were taught in school, the one with ancient civilizations developing in tidy, isolated bubbles, completely unaware of each other until the age of exploration. That familiar narrative begins to feel like a comfortable fiction when confronted by these echoes in stone. The evidence carved into the landscape suggests a far more dynamic, and far more mysterious prehistory. It forces us to consider two equally staggering possibilities, each of which rewrites the opening chapters of the human story in its own way. The first possibility is one of hidden connections. What if the oceans and continents were not the absolute barriers we assume them to be, at least not for all of human history? We know that sea levels were dramatically lower for thousands of years after the last ice age, exposing vast coastal plains and creating archipelagos where there are now only open waters. What if early peoples possessing remarkable seafaring skills we have underestimated used these now drowned landscapes as pathways? The journey does not require a fleet of advanced ships. A single group blown off course by a storm, landing on a foreign shore and sharing stories around a fire could plant a seed. That seed might be a powerful idea, the notion of honoring your ancestors with a mountain or marking the solstice with a ring of stones. This is not about a lost super-civilization spreading a uniform blueprint, but about sporadic, chance encounters that sparked inspiration across impossible distances. It suggests a deep prehistory woven with threads of interaction we can no longer see, threads that frayed and vanished as seas rose and lands changed. The second possibility is perhaps even more humbling. It suggests that these connections were not physical but psychological, woven into the very fabric of the human mind. If no traveler ever crossed between these cultures, then the pattern reveals something extraordinary about our shared consciousness. When disparate societies, from the foggy coasts of Europe to the high Andes, reached a similar point of social complexity and asked the same fundamental questions, they independently arrived at the same monumental answer. They asked, how do we make peace with loss and ensure our loved ones are remembered? The answer, in countless languages, was build a chamber of stone. They asked, how do we predict the seasons and align our lives with the cosmos? The answer, from the Sahara to Salisbury, was raise stones to catch the light. This theory of convergent evolution in culture suggests that the drive to create permanent meaning from the most durable material is a latent human potential, a universal response to the awe and anxiety of existence. It means the blueprint was not carried on a boat, but carried in our DNA, waiting for the right social and spiritual conditions to be expressed. Whether through fleeting contact across forgotten seas or through the parallel genius of the human spirit, the implication is the same. Our ancient ancestors were far more capable, far more curious, and far more deeply connected in their concerns than we have often given them credit for. The megalithic phenomenon pulls back the curtain on a prehistory that is not a simple story of primitive struggle, but a rich tapestry of intellectual and spiritual striving. It shows us that long before empires and written histories, humanity was engaged in a global, though uncoordinated, conversation about the biggest mysteries of life, using the most permanent vocabulary they had. The stones are that conversation, frozen in time. They stand not as ruins of forgotten tribes, but as enduring statements from our collective past, reminding us that the desire to reach for the eternal, to mark our place under the sun, and to build something greater than ourselves is a chorus that has always been sung in granite and basalt across the entire world. The story told by these stones is still being written. For every connection we glimpse, a dozen deeper questions rise to the surface, ensuring this mystery remains one of history's most vibrant frontiers. Was there a single, primordial point of origin for this idea, a place like Göbekli Tepe from which the concept slowly rippled outward? Or did the seed sprout independently in multiple fertile grounds across the world, a testament to a shared human genius? The current evidence makes a definitive answer elusive, and that is precisely what drives the next generation of exploration. The tools for this detective work are becoming astonishingly precise. Future breakthroughs may not come from a single dramatic dig, but from the quiet collaboration of disparate sciences. Geneticists are now mapping ancient DNA, tracing the movements of populations across continents and millennia, looking for threads of connection between the builders of distant sites. Could a shared lineage, however faint, be found in the genetic material from memorial sites in the Caucasus and Western Europe? Meanwhile, geologists are employing a technique known as lithic analysis, which acts like a forensic fingerprint for stone. By examining the unique mineral composition of a monolith, they can sometimes pinpoint the exact quarry it came from, even if that source is hundreds of miles away. This could map ancient trade routes or migration paths of knowledge, showing us how the idea of working specific stones traveled, even if the people did not. And what of the sophisticated astronomy? How did cultures from the Sahara to the Pacific develop such precise celestial calendars without, as far as we know, comparing notes? The answer may lie in patient, long-term observation over centuries, a cumulative science passed down through oral tradition and ritual, each generation refining the alignments of their ancestors' stones. The most tantalizing clues, however, may lie beneath the waves. We must remember that the coastlines of the world looked radically different 12,000 years ago at the end of the last ice age. Vast tracts of land, now submerged, were once dry, fertile plains and coastal highways for early human societies. This is where underwater archaeology enters the story, offering a potential treasure trove. Sophisticated sonar and submersible technology are now scanning these lost continental shelves, searching for the outlines of structures, the scatter of tools, or the arrangement of stones that could represent a missing chapter. A single discovery of a submerged megalithic site on one of these ancient shores could redraw the entire map of prehistory, proving that early peoples built monuments in landscapes that have long since vanished beneath the sea. The lesson from Göbekli Tepe is profound. It taught us to expect the unexpected. Each new site uncovered, each new date, a point from a genetic study or a geological analysis, has the potential to overturn a settled assumption and send researchers back to the drawing board. This is not a closed case gathering dust in an archive. It is a living, breathing investigation. The quest to understand why our ancestors everywhere chose to answer life's deepest questions with mountains of stone ensures that our own story, the story of how we came to be and what we are capable of, remains thrillingly unfinished. The stones have given us their final lesson, and it is one of breathtaking unity in diversity. Our journey across the map and through deep time reveals a tapestry, not a single thread. The global pattern of megalithic sites is not the fingerprint of a forgotten super-civilization that ruled the world. Instead, it stands as a monumental testament to a shared human genius, a capacity that lives within us all. It is the capacity for awe in the face of the cosmos, for profound social organization, and for that deep, irrepressible desire to etch our most cherished beliefs into the most permanent canvas we could find, the very bones of the earth itself. These silent sentinels from Turkey, France, Peru, and 1,000 remote islands are not saying the same thing in the same language. They are asking the same eternal questions in 1,000 magnificent local dialects. They asked, what is our place in the great turning of the stars? They asked, how do we honor those who came before and ensure our own memory endures? They asked, how can we build something that will speak to the future? And from the rolling hills of Britain to the shores of the Pacific, the answer resonated in granite and basalt. Build, raise the impossible, make a mark that time itself will struggle to erase. This shared impulse asks us now to expand our imagination about the ancient world. We must let go of the tidy map of isolated cultures developing in perfect, ignorant bubbles. The evidence written in stone suggests a prehistory far more dynamic, woven with possibilities of sporadic contact, shared inspirations, and most powerfully, the parallel flowering of similar solutions to the universal human condition. Whether through whispers carried on ancient currents or through the independent spark of genius, the result is the same, a chorus of stones sung across the entire planet. So as we conclude, try to see these places not as static ruins of a dead past. See them as they truly are, active questions carved in enduring form. They are not relics to be catalogued and left behind. They are invitations. They invite us to keep looking, to keep questioning, and to keep marveling at the profound, interconnected, and still unfolding story of humanity. The next chapter is yours to write, simply by choosing to look at the old stones with new eyes.